Super Mario World is Super Mario World, a beloved game by most, a first game for millions, and a perennial frontrunner on every best of list since making lists became a thing. I don't have a witty intro, catchy title to bring in them views, or some random piece of history everyone hasn't repeated hundreds of times. So with that, let's get on with it. Much like Mario 2, Super Mario World opens with some brief story text. Mario is in Dinosaur Land, and Bowser has kidnapped the princess again. Oh boy. After this, the player is given two paths to take on an overworld map. While seemingly arbitrary at first, this is the first clue the game offers multiple paths to Bowser's castle. Regardless of which choice the player makes, new moves are explained via text. Yeah, this kickstarted a trend of text boxes explaining new mechanics to players rather than thoughtful design, but the boxes are optional and unobtrusive. In addition to the classic maneuvers like running and kicking Koopa shells, Mario now has a spin jump, which does more damage and can break through blocks from above. Koopa shells can be kicked straight up into the air, and of course, Yoshi. Yoshi is a useful power-up, delivering the same power as a spin jump and the ability to gobble up most small enemies. Even more impressive, picking up different colored shells and spitting them back out will yield different results depending on their color. The most unique are the red shells offering a flame attack and the blue shell giving Yoshi the power of flight. Lastly, the opening stages show off the new item holding mechanic. An extra power-up can be saved in this little box and retrieved at any time with the select button. It will also be released automatically if the player takes damage. Overall, the spin jump, Yoshi, and item box are nice evolutions to the classic formula. However, the item lineup is small when compared to Mario 3. The main power-ups are the Super Mushroom, which allows the spin jump to break bricks and gives a hit point, a Fire Flower, giving the familiar projectile attack along with coins, and the Cape Feather, which transforms Mario into Caped Mario. While one might be quick to pronounce fewer items as a downgrade over the previous title, I don't think more power-ups necessarily mean a better game. Sonic the Hedgehog got by with just speed shoes and temporary invincibility. While Yoshi is probably the most iconic feature of Super Mario World, the Cape Feather is the most significant. Like the Super Leaf, Mario can do a whipping maneuver to take down enemies, even while swimming, slow his descent when falling, jump really high, and can fly. Unlike the Super Leaf, the power of flight can last indefinitely unless an object obstructs the flight path. Thankfully, it is somewhat awkward to use. Once in the air, the player needs to occasionally press back on the D-pad to prolong lift. Once one gets the pattern down, flying through levels can be remarkably easy. Pressing forward on the D-pad will cause Mario to crash into the ground, causing a quake, destroying everything on the screen. As one can't see where they are going to land, I never used it. The controls themselves are superb as expected. An area of contention between Mario fans is the debate on which game feels better, Mario 3 or Mario World. While I would like to pick sides and enrage half the viewing audience, I can honestly say they are both excellent. Playing every classic Mario game back to back, I can honestly say each game has a learning curve. Having not played the game in years, Mario 1 initially felt stiff and strange. Mario 2 felt loose and slippery. Mario 3 felt floaty. And finally, Mario World felt twitchy. In hindsight, it's remarkable the developers continued to tweak and refine the physics, looking for the perfect feel rather than just settling on what previously worked. In the end, I would say Mario 3 and World are both the best, delivering predictable momentum and excellent mid-air maneuverability. While Mario 3 is floatier, I don't find this to be an objective fault or an objective advantage either. The obstacles and hazards presented in both games are perfectly suited to the minor differences in physics of each title. Like past games, landing on small platforms is satisfying, with the predictable acceleration and mid-air deceleration giving players the exact control needed to tackle platforming challenges. If one finds I am being too generous, I would give something like Alex Kidd a try, where landing on small platforms can be anxiety-inducing. With the controls and items out of the way, I should probably dive into the world of Dinosaur Land. The world itself feels both familiar with an occasional nod to past games, yet sufficiently different. It It is clear this isn't the Mushroom Kingdom or a stage play. Themes are certainly reused from past games like underground caves, castles, and mushroom platforms, but the style is new. There is this overall theme of using shapes as patterns. The ground has rectangle patterns in it, for example, yet the blocks in the castle stage have round patterns. It feels unique enough to make the land feel foreign, yet still belonging to the same universe. So, what will a player be doing in Super Mario World? Well, pretty much the same things Mario has been doing for the 6 years prior. Platforming through levels, reaching the end goal, unlocking the next level, fighting a boss, and moving on. It's a tried and true formula that doesn't need tweaking. However, an area where I feel Super Mario World stands out is in the variety of challenges and level types. Now, again, I must say, I don't think having more variety makes one game better than another. Sonic 06 is packed with variety, and we all know how that turned out. Underground areas feature shifting rocks, and there's an emphasis on not getting crushed. There are plenty of shelled enemies, and a player will need to be mindful to use the spin attacks so they don't lock themselves in a tight space with a ricocheting shell. Later, a player will need to use sinking rocks to quickly navigate over a lava field. This escalates into a maze-like level near the end of the adventure, where the player needs to race from nook to nook and avoid getting crushed. Water levels returned and are the most thoughtful yet found in the series. Now, don't get me wrong, I would still prefer the frog suit, but enemy speed is reduced, making dodging fish with the slow controls much more in line with the patterns presented. I also love the player can press up and quickly ascend the screen. Holding an item also increases Mario's speed. These add some much needed maneuverability generally lacking in classic water stages. The Cape Feather also outclasses the Super Leaf in underwater levels. As best as I can remember, Mario could only tail whip in Mario 3 underwater if standing on the ground, which was not useful for traversing a timed level. In Super Mario World, the cape can be used while swimming, again preventing underwater levels from feeling unfair. The Fire Flower of course works underwater like always, but there is no item box, so one can't equip the desired power-up prior to entering a level. My favorite new archetype are the Ghost Houses, where the exit is hidden. This is an evolution of the castle in World 7 of Mario 3, where a player needed to notice a secret door being revealed after pressing a switch block, which led to the exit. The Ghost Houses work the same way, which is a good thing because I don't find room filled with doors engaging. Anyway, these expand upon the concept because the switch blocks can now be picked up and moved. It is up to the player to find the clues in the level as to where one should be placed. This can sometimes be obvious, sometimes cryptic, and other times clever. While I'm still not convinced a timer should be located in cryptic levels where experimentation is needed to find a goal, these are a terrific addition to the Mario formula. The castle levels returned and are still an excellent way to cap off each world. The first starts off simple and features these fences Mario can latch onto, allowing an alternate path over lava pits. Mario can punch Koopas, which is charming for sure, but the gimmick feels underdeveloped. Large crushing columns are also featured, which are easy to avoid in the first castle, but are made more difficult later on when saws and other hazards are added to the mix. These moving platforms are tricky, forcing the player to keep moving, but not too fast as they could change direction at any time. And of course, this is later made more difficult with spike hazards. Early castles have moving platforms the player needs to observe, not only to progress through the level, but observe to avoid getting crushed. This too is expanded upon later in the game with platforms moving over lava pits, demanding even more attention from the player. The difficulty curve from beginning to end is great. Another thing Super Mario World does really well is mix different concepts into a single level. This is really evident with the water stages. Torpedo Teds can be found underwater, and there's a sunken ship containing a swarm of boos to maneuver around. Super Mario World contains plenty of one-off or lesser used mechanics too. The player is tasked with riding along these ropes, moving up and down to avoid hazards. Chocolate Island 2 completely changes depending on the amount of coins collected and how much time has passed. The power balloon transforms Mario into a balloon temporarily. Overall, between the different level types, unique power-ups, power-ups and increasing difficulty as the adventure progresses, players are kept engaged from beginning to end with few lulls in the action. Sadly, I can't say the same thing for the bosses. The Koopa Kids return and form the 7 bosses of each of the 7 worlds. As has been the tradition for the series thus far, these are easy and not as challenging as the castle levels played to reach them in the first place. The player either has to push a Koopa Kid down a teeter-totter platform, dodge a falling Koopa, or hit one out of a pipe. These attempt to get more difficult with more aggressive patterns, but it is hardly noticeable. One includes a Quake attack, but the boss moves so slow the player has enough time to endure the attack and then jump without getting hit. Now, I'm not saying great boss battles are required for a great game, but these Koopa Kid encounters are a low point in the adventure. The Reznor boss is actually the most interesting battle. The fight changes depending on how quickly the player strikes each enemy. If done fast enough, they can be defeated before the bridge on the bottom of the screen collapses completely. If the player moves too slow, they'll be forced to maneuver along the 4 platforms. In either case, dodging the incoming projectiles isn't difficult, but at least the encounter has some semblance of depth. The final encounter against Bowser is alright too, assuming a player read the text box in the opening stage and experimented with kicking enemies straight into the air. They should be able to dodge the 3 patterns of Bowser and use the new attack to take him down. Princess Peach even provides 2 mushrooms, easing the difficulty. Is this an epic battle truly testing the player's mastery and skill? Not really, but it is good enough. However, I can't help but think most of these encounters are handicapped by the attempt at showing off the rotation and scaling effects offered by the 16-bit hardware. In each, the enemy or Ferris wheel thing rotates or scales. The result is smooth 60 frames per second effects, but the fact these are background layers limits the flexibility, and this limitation certainly shows in the gameplay. Other new effects are used too. There are plenty of transparency effects in the clouds, though the water still uses checkerboarding, and of course there is the pixelation effect for screen transitions. In 2018, none of this is particularly impressive, but I'm sure it turned a few heads back in 1991. Hardware tricks aside, Super Mario World is a good-looking game. I honestly think the minimalist art style works in the game's favor. The simple sprites mixed with more detailed backgrounds creates an almost cartoon-like aesthetic. Color and contrast is great, with platforms and enemies always contrasting beautifully with their surroundings, and the game is relatively free of slowdown. This sort of minimalist and clean style is present in the soundtrack as well. The opening track is wonderful, with a very hummable hook. The instrument selection is great, with a rhythmic background overlaid with steel drums, which act like the vocals. The track has multiple parts, like an intro, verse, and chorus, making it feel grand and modern, as opposed to looping video game music. The main tune is then remixed as the game progresses with different instruments. Perhaps this is why the melody has been ingrained in my brain. The composer didn't stop there either. In the castle levels, the main verses slowed down, remaining familiar but presenting a completely different vibe. Rather than bouncy and exciting, the music is dreadful and adds some real tension on the way to the boss. The Ghost House levels do the same thing. That familiar hook is again repeated, but it sounds completely different when paired with the 80s slasher flick nods. While some might decry the lack of melodic variety, I actually find the overall soundtrack to be quite strong. I think it's admirable Koji Kondo had the cojones to experiment with remixing the same melody over and over. Sometimes limiting oneself can bring out unexpected creativity, and I think this is a great example. While the difficulty progression, controls, graphics, art style, and soundtrack are outstanding, I think the standout feature in Super Mario World is the replayability, and how this replayability is communicated to the player. If a player chose to go left at the beginning of the game, they'll reach the Yellow Switch Palace. Beating this easy level will turn all of the yellow dotted line blocks in the game into exclamation blocks. This might cover up some death pits or reveal a helpful mushroom power-up. The player will no doubt notice other dotted colored blocks as well, alerting one to the fact other color switch palaces must exist. However, none are ever visible on the map when playing normally. When the player enters the second world, Donut Plains, a message block clues the player into the difference between a yellow level marker and the red level marker on the map screen. The red ones have 2 exits. This opens the door to about half the content found in the adventure. Finding a secret exit will often reveal a branching path, featuring levels not accessible on a normal playthrough. In fact, if one knows exactly what they are doing, they can reach Bowser's Castle by playing through just 11 levels. Alternatively, seeking out all 96 exits will give the player bragging rights on the title screen. Finding secret exits is the only way to unlock and engage the rest of the Switch Palaces. Going out of one's way to locate each Switch Palace will admittedly make the game easier, with extra power-ups, extra lives, and paths to new exits, along with gating off some enemies. While an experienced player won't really need these handicaps compared to a newer player, I do feel like the reward is immediate and tangible to the player, which I like. Of course, if a stage has 2 exits, that does mean the player will have to play some levels twice in order to complete their save file. I have mixed feelings on this concept as a whole. In some games, this just feels like padding. In Super Mario World, it mostly feels acceptable. Levels are short, for one, and the alternate goals often means following a different path through the level, meaning sections are not always repeated. Having to repeat the slow Valley of Bowser 2, though, is kind of lame. There is a skill element too, as the Cape Feather is often needed to reach the alternate exit, meaning one can't take damage if they want to reach the secret goal. Sometimes Yoshi is required. One might need to snatch a key through an impenetrable wall, for example. In another area, jumping off Yoshi mid-flight is the most convenient way to reach the exit. The spin jump is even put to good use. The cleverness and extra proficiency needed to reach the exits and the reward of all new content makes this side quest engaging rather than tedious and gives the adventure some real replayability. I suspect this replayability is what many gamers find so endearing about Super Mario World. Accessibility is another area where I feel Super Mario World stands out. First, lives are plentiful. Per usual, collecting 100 coins will do the trick. There are 1-up mushrooms littered throughout the game. Chaining enemies together via jump, kicking a shell, or using the superstar will eventually yield extra lives. There are hidden moons rewarding 3 extra lives. And there is the level's exit. The higher the player touches the goal, the more stars they will earn, with 100 sending the player to a bonus game. And like Mario 2, this is another gambling type game. With enough practice, veteran players can probably match all of the tiles and earn 8 lives. However, I never found a good rhythm for this game. There are little bonus levels hidden in some levels too, requiring the player to hit 3 blocks and earning a 1-up mushroom if done correctly. Most levels contain 5 or more dragon coins. Collecting 5 will reward an extra life. It is my understanding in the Game Boy Advance port, these become something necessary for completion, but in the SNES original, they are only here for earning lives. Not only are lives plentiful, but the player can save after every fortress, castle, and ghost house level, meaning players don't lose much progress after a game over, or if they want to return to the adventure later. Sadly, all of those lives earned are lost once reloading a save, always resetting to 5, which seems a little silly. A crafty player can cheese the game though. If a player already has Yoshi and finds another egg, they'll receive a 1-up instead. If one has unlocked the top secret area, they can re-enter this one-screen bonus room over and over to farm lives. Another feature of this room is the ability to equip the Fire Flower and Cape Feather. I was initially disappointed the item box from Super Mario Bros. 3 was absent and replaced with the reserve item slot. However, in practice, persistent players will have access to the desired power-up and a Yoshi whenever they want. Another small accessibility touch is the checkpoint system. Passing through one will turn Mario into Super Mario. This is a reasonable reward for newcomers who need it, without allowing one to bypass challenges. What does allow one to bypass challenges is the Cape Feather. As noted earlier, a player can fly indefinitely. This means many stages can simply be flown over without penalty. If the level has a yellow dot on the map screen, a player won't need to bother searching for a secret exit either. If I was was going to try and make a comparison between Super Mario Bros. 3 and Super Mario World, this is probably where I would start. Raccoon Mario's flight is limited rather than infinite, and even the obnoxious P-Wing only exists a finite number of times because Toad houses and stages cannot be revisited. In Super Mario World, the Cape Feather is always accessible and the flight power lasts forever. Curiously, there are times when a pipe stretches all the way to the top of the screen, preventing this game-breaking mechanic. This is design I can appreciate, and it feels like the developers were being mindful of such abuse. Sadly, these don't exist in every level, and negate that mindful feeling. One might argue self-control is needed when playing Super Mario World, but I maintain it is a game designer's job to balance a game's difficulty, and not a player's. I also can't help but feel Yoshi is underutilized, and his full potential is not realized. But in order to explore this fully, I have to talk about Star World and Special Zone. While reaching secret exits and unlocking new paths, a player will uncover new icons leading to the Star World. These 5 levels are not hard by any stretch, but introduce the player to new colored Yoshis as well as baby Yoshis. Rather than an egg hatching a fully grown Yoshi, the eggs here hatch baby Yoshis. They gobble up enemies too, and gobbling up 5 will allow them to grow to full size. While holding a Yoshi and gobbling up 5 enemies before getting the full Yoshi experience isn't necessarily deep or complex, I do appreciate how a little work must be done before getting the full reward. I would be curious to know why this concept isn't used in the regular stages. One will notice baby Yoshis come in 4 colors, and the color of the Yoshi will bypass the shell color requirements needed for green Yoshi, meaning the blue Yoshi will always fly, red Yoshi will spit fire, and so on. These Yoshis can be carried into regular levels, but it does seem strange to me they are only found in the Star World. Well, there is an obscure power-up that will turn a green Yoshi blue, but it is rare. This triangle block allows Mario to run up vertical surfaces, which seems like it could create some new level types, but is sadly rarely used either. These half-implemented features make me feel like certain aspects of the title were rushed, which is not the feeling I want to have when playing a game. After beating all of the Star World levels, the player unlocks Special Zone. These 8 worlds are generally the toughest stages found in the game, but also feature concepts not really found in the main game. Gnarly is an interesting vertical level, which is rarely featured on a normal playthrough. The second half of Awesome seems impossible at first, but a well-placed switch block creates a platform leading to a star block, making it manageable to pass through waves of Cheep Cheeps. I actually find this really clever, and perhaps the best use of the Superstar power-up yet featured in the series. Sadly, half the levels can again be bypassed with the Cape Feather, which is unfortunate. And then there is the dreaded Tubular stage. This uses the power balloon, and plenty of trial and error is required to locate the other 2 power balloons needed to reach the exit, as well as learning the positions of the charging chucks, whose projectiles pop Balloon Mario, causing instant death. This is a frustrating level. I also got stuck in 2 places. First, the player is supposed to press up when exiting diagonal pipes to get maximum distance and avoid falling to their doom, but this is never communicated to the player. Second, I could not figure out how to reach the secret exit of the Valley Ghost House. Certain coin blocks in ghost houses spawn a line of coins. It is never made obvious to the player they are controlling the direction these coins are moving. This might have been a good opportunity for one of those message blocks. In any case, once a player looks it up or stumbles upon the mechanic, they can build a staircase out of coins, which can then be flipped into a platform with the switch block. And honestly, these are my only real complaints with Super Mario World. The power-ups and items feel underutilized, and the Cape Feather is overpowered. The balloon power-up isn't fun to use, Fire Mario is outclassed in nearly every way by the awesome Cape Whip attack, the unlimited flight breaks many levels, and Yoshi's special abilities feel underdeveloped. However, don't misinterpret my critiques and observations to mean Super Mario World is not a great game. I cannot stress this enough, but the classic Sonic titles, Donkey Kong Country Trilogy, and 16-bit Mario games are in a league of their own when it comes to 90s platforming, while efforts by Virgin Games, Traveler's Tales, and even Ubisoft and Crystal Dynamics are all great in their own right, Sega, Rare, and Nintendo really were on another level. Super Mario Mario World is an amazing title and offers a top-tier platforming experience few games even come close to matching. Just like the previous game, the exceptional controls make the game extremely playable. The near lack of trial and error, surprise enemy placement, or other unfair design elements make the game feel polished and quite enjoyable. I absolutely love the variety of challenges presented to the player, the combat-focused levels, platform-focused levels, some surprisingly good water levels, and of course the puzzle-based ghost house levels kept me engaged from beginning to end, and I never found myself getting bored with a bad stretch of stages. At the end of the day, I still think the high replayability is the game's crowning achievement. The multiple paths and secret exits give the player tangible reasons to keep replaying the game over and over in an attempt to get a star 96 on their save file. I find this to be far more compelling than playing trial and error bonus stages to try and obtain 7 Chaos Emeralds, for example. While my praise may not be as absolute as others, the Nintendo-like attention to detail is still present. Thanks to the wonderful controls, the game is easy for beginners to jump right in and not feel like cheap elements are robbing them of fun. Yet there is so much optional content for experienced players to chew on and get the full experience. In the end, Super Mario World is great for beginners, great for veterans, great for everyone, and is mandatory playing for fans of the genre.